All right, good morning, everyone. It's funny, on Sunday, I was doing my usual stream on Sunday, and I joked that I had a Vigano letter for people for Monday, which, if you haven't seen it yet, it's yesterday. And I said, hey, my channel's on the danger is dangerously close to becoming, K Vigano all the time. And then somebody made that joke Monday morning in the comments, right? They probably were listening to the stream when I made that joke. But I mention it because an hour after I got off that stream, another letter from Archbishop Vigano went live. And, okay. So I have the letter for you, and I'll read it for you. I skimmed it so I can understand the context of what he was saying without having any preconceived ideas, and I didn't read the stuff that LifeSite put with it because I just didn't want to go there. So before we do this, the context is, if you remember my video I did a week or so ago where I mentioned how Vigano had been labeled a schismatic, well, this is his response to that accusation. Now, I don't usually read these live, so if I, stumble or something, I can't edit it out. So, just bear with me. So let me see how many people are here before I, start this. All right, we're getting pretty decent here. And then we'll talk about a couple other things. Good morning to Jay Slice, mutual friend of someone who found me on Facebook. The attendant says, change the channel's name to Return to Vigano. Thomas Keller had to approve that comment. Yeah, and little wonder why. All right, so again, Archbishop Vigano issued a letter responding to the letter accusing him of schism, or the article accusing him of schism. So I'm going to read this, and if you come into this late, don't worry, you'll be able to listen to this when it goes live on the playback. All right, so Archbishop Vigano's full response to Sandro Magister, dated the 3rd of July, 2020. Saint on the feast of Saint Irenaeus, Bishop and Martyr. Dear Mr. Magister, permit me to reply to your article, Archbishop Vigano on the Brink of Schism, published at Settimo Cielo on the 29th of June. I am aware that having dared to express an opinion strongly critical of the Council is sufficient to awaken the inquisitorial spirit that in other cases is the object of execration by right-thinking people. Nonetheless, in a respectful dispute between ecclesiastics and competent laity, it does not seem to me to be inappropriate to raise problems that remain unresolved to date, the foremost of which is the crisis that has afflicted the Church since Vatican II and has now reached the point of devastation. There are those who speak of the misrepresentation of the Council, emphasis his, others who speak of the need to return to reading it in continuity with the tradition. Others of the opportunity to correct any errors contained in it, or to interpret the equivocal points in a Catholic sense. On the opposing side, there is no lack of those who consider Vatican II as a blueprint for which to proceed in the revolution, the changing and transformation of the Church into an entirely new and modern entity, in step with the times. This is part of the normal dynamics of a dialogue that is all too often invoked but rarely practiced. Those who thus far have expressed dissent about what I have said have never entered into the merit of the argument, limiting themselves to saddling me with epithets that have already been merited by far more illustrious and venerable brothers in the episcopate. It is curious that, both in the doctrinal as well as in the political arena, the progressives claim for themselves a primacy, a state of election, that apodictically places the adversary in a position of ontological inferiority, unworthy of attention or response, and simplistically liquidable as Lefebvrean on the ecclesial front or fascist on the social political front. But their lack of arguments does not legitimize them to dictate the rules, nor to decide who has the right to speak, especially when reason, even prior to faith, has demonstrated where the deception is, who the author is, and what the purpose is. At first it appeared to me that the content of your article was to be considered more an understandable tribute to the prince, who can be found in the frescoed salons of the Third Loggia, or in the stylish offices of the editor, and yet in reading what you attribute to me I discovered an inaccuracy, let's call it that I hope is the result of a misunderstanding. I therefore ask you to grant me space to reply at Settimo Cielo. You state that I have supposedly blamed Benedict XVI, quote, for having deceived the whole Church in that he would have it be believed that the Second Vatican Council was immune to heresies, and moreover should be interpreted in perfect continuity with true perennial doctrine, end quote. I do not think that I have ever written such a thing about the Holy Father. On the contrary, I said, and I affirm, that we were all, or almost all, deceived by those who used the Council as a container, equipped with its own implicit authority, and the authoritativeness of the Fathers, who took part in it, while distorting its purpose, and those who fell into this deception did so because, loving the Church and the papacy, they could not imagine that in the heart of Vatican II a minority of very organized conspirators could use a council to demolish the Church from within, and that in doing so they could count on the silence and inaction of authority, if not on its complicity. These are historical facts of which I permit myself to give a personal interpretation, but one which I think others may share. I'm going to pause here and just see if anybody here in the comments has got anything. Just everyone saying hello, good morning to everybody. I will leave this up so you can go listen to this again, and I'll put a link in the chat here so you can read the letter yourself. But let me get back to my place here. All right, let me continue. I permit myself also to remind you, as if there was any need, that the positions of moderate critical rereading of the Council in a traditional sense by Benedict XVI are part of a laudable recent past, while in the formidable 70s the position of then theologian Joseph Ratzinger was quite different. Authoritative studies stand alongside the same admissions of the professor of Tübingen, confirming the partial repentances of the emeritus. Nor do I see a, quote, reckless indictment launched by Vigano against Benedict XVI for his failed attempts to correct conciliar excesses by invoking the hermeneutic of continuity, end quote, since this is an opinion widely shared not only in conservative circles but also and above all among progressives. And it should be said that what the innovators succeeded in obtaining by means of deception, cunning, and blackmail was the result of a vision that we have found later applied in the maximum degree in the Bergoglian quote-unquote magisterium of Amoris Laetitia. The malicious intention is admitted by Ratzinger himself. Quote, the impression grew steadily that nothing was now stable in the Church, that everything was open to revision. More and more the Council appeared to be like a great Church Parliament that could change everything and reshape everything according to its own desires. End quote. See Joseph Ratzinger's Milestones, translation from the German. You can get it from Ignatius Press, page 132. But even more so by the words of the Dominican Edward Skillebeck, quote, we express it diplomatically now, but after the Council we will draw the implicit conclusions, end quote. We have confirmed that the intentional ambiguity in the text had the purpose of keeping opposing and irreconcilable visions together, in the name of an evaluation of utility and to the detriment of revealed truth, a truth that, when it is integrally proclaimed, cannot fail to be divisive, just as our Lord is divisive. Do you think that I have come to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. See Luke chapter 12, verse 51. I do not find anything reprehensible in suggesting that we should forget Vatican II. Its proponents knew how to confidently exercise this damnatio memorare, not just with a council, but with everything, even to the point of affirming that their council was the first of the new church, emphasis his, and that beginning with their council, the old religion and the old mass was finished. You will say to me that these are the positions of extremists and that virtue stands in the middle, that is, among those who consider that Vatican II is only the latest of an uninterrupted series of events in which the Holy Spirit speaks through the mouth of the one and only infallible magisterium. If so, it should be explained why the conciliar church was given a new liturgy and a new calendar, and consequently a new doctrine, nova lex orandi, nova lex credendi, distancing itself from its own past with disdain. The mere idea of setting the council aside causes scandal, even in those, like you, who recognize the crisis of recent years, but who persist in not wanting to recognize the causal link between Vatican II and its logical and inevitable effects. You write, quote, attention, not the council interpreted badly, but the council as such, and en bloc, end quote. I ask you then, what would be the correct interpretation of the council? The one you give, or the one given, while they wrote the decrees and declarations by its very industrious architects? Or perhaps that of the German episcopate? Or that of the theologians who teach in the pontifical universities and that we see published in the most popular Catholic periodicals in the world? Or that of Joseph Ratzinger? Or that of Bishop Schneider? Or that of Bergoglio? This would be enough to understand how much damage has been caused by the deliberate adoption of a language that was so murky that it legitimized opposing and contrary interpretations, on the basis of which the famous conciliar springtime then occurred. This is why I do not hesitate to say that assembly should be forgotten as such and en bloc, and I claim the right to say it without thereby making myself guilty of the delict of schism for having attacked the unity of the Church. The unity of the Church is inseparable in charity and in truth, and where error reigns or even only worms its way in, there cannot be charity. The fairy tale of the hermeneutic, even though an authoritative one because of its author, nevertheless remains an attempt to want to give the dignity of a council to a true and proper ambush against the Church, so as not to discredit it along with the popes who wanted, imposed, and reproposed that council, so much so that those same popes, one after another, rose to the honors of the altar for having been, quote, popes of the council, end quote. Again, I'm going to pause here and let people know who might just be joining us. I'm going over yet again the second in as many days letter from Archbishop Vigano. So, and yes, I just want to say hello to everyone who's checking in. Teresa Baker Carl, just to let you know, my knee is getting better by inches. But yes, I'm going to continue so I can get this letter done, and we can then discuss it a little bit before maybe touching on the Hermit of Loretto, because I have an observation about that. Anyway, continuing. Allow me to quote from the article that Dr. Maria Guarini published on June 29th at Chiese Post Concilio in reaction to your piece at Settimo Cielo entitled, Archbishop Vigano is not on the brink of schism. Many sins are coming to a head. She writes, and it is precisely from here that it is born, and for this reason risks continuing, without results, thus far, except for the debate triggered by Archbishop Vigano, the dialogue between deaf people, because the interlocutors use different reality grids. Vatican II, changing the language, has also changed the parameters of approach to reality, and so it happens that we also talk about the same thing, which, however, is given entirely different meanings. Among other things, the principal characteristic of the present hierarchy is the use of incontestable affirmations, without ever bothering to demonstrate them, or with flawed and sophisticated demonstrations. But they do not even have need of demonstrations, because the new approach and the new language have subverted everything from the beginning, and the unproven nature of the anomalous pastorality without any defined theological principles is precisely what takes away from the raw material of the dispute. It is the advance of a shapeless, ever-changing, dissolving fluid in place of the clear, unequivocal, definitive, truthful construct, the incandescent perennial firmness of dogma against the sewage and shifting sands of the transient neo-magisterium, end quote. I continue to hope that the tone of your article was not dictated by the simple fact that I have dared to open the debate about that council that many, too many, in the ecclesial structure consider as a unicum in the history of the Church, almost as an untouchable idol. You may be certain that unlike many bishops, such as those of the German synodal path, who have already gone far beyond the brink of schism, promoting and brazenly attempting to impose aberrant ideologies and practices on the universal Church, I have no desire. All right, you can hear me now. Sorry. I'm assuming YouTube managed to record all of that, even though I lagged. This is the problem with live streaming. That's why I didn't do it initially. But then YouTube started hammering me because I wasn't taking advantage of all the tools they gave me to be successful here. So, anyway, I'm back. And here's the first part of that Latin that he ended it with that I skipped because I'm not going to butcher the Church's mother tongue if I can get away with it. And the second half is right here. Nope. I'm saying some people say go back to universal church you have no desire for. All right, let me see. All right, so I'll start back up just before that. It's before that, before the Latin prayer. So, you may be certain that unlike many bishops, such as those of the German synodal path, who have already gone far beyond the brink of schism, promoting and brazenly attempting to impose aberrant ideologies and practices on the universal church. I have no desire to separate myself from Mother Church, for the exaltation of which I daily renew the offering of my life. And then here is where the Latin prayer that I put in the chat is. Receive, dear Sandra, my blessing and greeting, with best wishes for every good thing, in Christ Jesus. Signed, Carlo Maria Vigano. Now, my first thought is, I'd love it if more of the people who do these, if people in our realm who do these angry debates could, end with a best wishes sort of prayer to each other. That might be good. All right, so that's the newest letter from Vigano. I will put this up for people. I mean, the chat will be, the stream will be available for people after the fact. The thought I had before even watching this was he's sending an awful lot of material to Marco Tosati and to LifeSite and other places that the Vatican could, if he was in fear of his life, like he claims, easily track him down through. So I hope he cools it for a while. It was, for anybody who's relatively new to my channel, what would happen is one of the bishops I consider to be one of the better bishops, meaning any bishop who comes out and says the truth, even if I not personally have to agree with everything they say. They're the bishops. I'm not. But as long as it has the ring of Catholic truth to it, I would put it up, and we would get one of those once or twice a month, whether it was from Vigano or Schneider or Cardinal Sarah or a handful of others. And then Vigano started writing letters every week, and it started happening during the affliction. And I mean, it's made my job a little easier, but at the same time, after a while, I'm like, there are other things I need to talk about. So, but I know that you guys like the letter, so I want to make sure you get them, because not everybody wants to sit down and read them. Some people can only drive and listen. But I did a video today that was almost all commentary and hardly anybody watched it, because I know how this works. So, so let me know, what did you guys think of that letter in the chat here? That the letter from Vigano. And just to be nice, I mean, it's on LifeSite, but I've got so many I've quite a few tabs open. Here's the link to the actual letter for people who want it for themselves. Let's see. Yeah, Tom Reichard, I got to say, I don't see where he's wrong in this. This wouldn't be the first. Okay, good. I'm not lagging anymore. I'm on low latency, and it only briefly gives you the option to put it below even low latency. And I didn't catch it in time this morning because it's 2 seconds when you start setting up a stream. But I do tend to agree, Tom, that Vatican II is an untouchable idol. You could tell because most of the figures in the church don't go back further than Vatican II, or if they do, they only go back to Mater et Magistra. Rarely will they go back further than that, unless it's for some feast day or some dogma that was formally defined fairly close to Vatican II. But it's almost like the church doesn't exist in the minds of a lot of these folks. It's really just disturbing. That's one of the things that really got to me. Gwen, yeah, my knee it's not that bad, but I found out yesterday, I had to go to the store yesterday, and I had crutches and my knee brace on, and I found out why my exercise app has a login entry for walking with crutches. I walked around a Walmart for 40 minutes with crutches on, doing my due diligence, right? And I got back to my car, and I felt like I had just done 40 minutes of hard cardio at the gym. I was like, what is going on here? But, yeah, Lorelei, I don't plan to stop with Vigano's letters, but, it's 2 days in a row. 3, and then I had one on Friday, too, I think. Several days of Vigano letters. I want him to be safe, right? So, Keys and Sofa, appreciate you actually checking out my video asking who you will serve, Christ or the Luciferians. Because I go into some things about going on in the world right now with that, but, The silent, yeah, Thomas Keller, I do think that Vigano is, that might be Vigano's strategy, becoming basically such a high-profile figure that it would be dangerous to have anything against him. The concept of schism here is pretty interesting, right? It's one of those, people say the SSPX are in schism. They're not. I'll go with Bishop Schneider on that, who observed them for a couple of years at the behest of the Vatican recently. But, people treat like the Eastern Orthodox is much closer to us than Catholic groups who have some severe disagreements. Like, I get in heated debates with sedevacantists in the chat sometimes because, they break my one rule, which is don't recruit for sedevacantism on my channel. Otherwise, I don't care. You're welcome because you're a Catholic. People treat sedevacantists like they're further away from the church than the Eastern Orthodox, and this is so weird to me. Teresa Baker, Carl, glad you enjoyed the video this morning. Anyway, accusing people of schism when they rightly criticize the church is like progressive Catholic version of cancel culture. I mean, yeah, it is. It's cancel culture. It's Catholic cancel culture version 1.0. CD vacantists are those who only use VHS. Yeah, Pope Michael is worth following on Facebook, but just remember that guy actually has some issues. How long will they be able to ignore Vigano the way they have with the dubia? Vigano makes Burke look like managed position. Burke and Vigano are definitely taking a different tact with this. He also knows the last thing that I put on my channel from Cardinal Burke, was his Good Friday message. He hasn't released a public statement of any kind since March or early April. It's been a long time, and I'm wondering when he's going to say something, because he should at this point. Thomas Geller, the Daily Vigano. Yeah, I could almost change my channel's name to that if he gets more prolific. It's been a while since we heard of Burke. Well, thank you. Thank you. Glad you liked it, Forever Young. Francis is not in Gitmo. There's this weird rumor that he's under house arrest. I have no idea where that came from. It probably came from the Q people, and I keep that stuff beyond arm's length at this point. Can I possibly talk about EMJ being pulled down? I know. Well, he got taken down because he talks about the third rail of Catholic social teaching. That's his main thing, and YouTube listens to the people he criticizes the most. So that was almost inevitable. But they've got apparently they're going to have something to make sure that the content is on the platform still. I don't know what they're going to do, so just keep an eye out for it. They're on BitChute. Can a heretic really take the See of Peter? You'll have to ask a future council of the church that. They've been dodging that question forever. However, the history of the church says yes. Simple. The history of the church says yes. Honorius and Liberius and there have been a handful of heretical popes. The church has never formally adopted the fifth position of St. Robert Bellarmine. In fact, a lot of things St. Robert Bellarmine, despite being a doctor of the church, has never actually taken his position on. Vigano's prolific offerings now might be him trying to make as big an impact as possible while still living. It could be. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's got diagnosed with something that's limited his time. Or maybe he's being, attacked a lot now and he's having to defend himself, and that's what he's doing. Jaren Joju, you found my FB page. Well, I mean, I'm not actually Gaston. Sharon Jojo. Let me see if you're a friend request I haven't actually accepted yet, because if someone sends me a friend request and they can tell that their page is Catholic, I will accept it in general. But but if they don't, then if I can't tell it's Catholic, then I become much more reticent to do it, only because it's half the time, I get a friend request from what looks like a young woman, and then all of a sudden, and the one time I made the mistake of accepting that friend request from what looked like a relatively new account, I got inundated with gross stuff. So I'm now very careful. Jaron asks what's Gitmo. That's Guantanamo Bay. The U.S. military has a prison facility there in Cuba. Yeah, Sissy Brooks, I saw that too. That there are people in France who think that the church must adapt to the quote-unquote Franciscan vision. The fact that they even called it Franciscan made me want to retch. Roseanne Rossi, your bishop at an anti-R-word mass? Really? That's ridiculous. Wyatt, I do think you're right that it's why I and some others are working on something on the side. D. Marie, I know that a lot of people, even General, I mean, I respect General Flynn, and but there's enough anti-Catholic propaganda in the Q stuff that I separated myself from it. Captain Birdseye, what's my lifting routine look like when I'm not injuring myself? Since the end of the affliction closures in my state, I've had an injury every other week. It's really weird, but normally, ideally, I would get a quick arm day workout in the early hours of Sunday, because I can do that like super fast. I can get, like, knock out 8 arm workouts doing low weight, high volume, supersetted stuff. I can get that done on Sunday. Then Monday would be some kind of a leg day. I can't do squats because of just the issues my knee had before, but I can still do some kind of leg workout. Then Tuesday would be probably chest day, and Wednesday would be shoulders, and then Friday would be back, with a little bit of cardio to start, unless I have a to cut my grass or something that afternoon. Then I'll use my working in my yard as cutting the grass. Jaron, if I didn't approve it, go ahead and send it again. That friend request again. Last I had a great video on the Hermit of Loretto. Yeah, I watched it. I finally sat down and watched it, which is why I kind of want to see what you guys think about the Hermit of Loretto, and see what your thoughts are. And I have an observation about it that no one else seems to have. Roseanne Rossi, Gaston. Hey, Gaston's my favorite Disney prince. And yes, I share Father Isaac Marie Aurelia's take on Disney. I think Disney is overall just wicked evil. But I remember thinking Gaston was probably the greatest thing ever. Tom Mercy, the Hermit of Loretto. I was going to say something. Yeah, if you don't know about the Hermit of Loretto, I'm not going to do a video on it per se, because LifeSite has the gold standard video on it, right? Like, why, but I will tell you that it's very good. But it's basically, the short version of it is that there was an American who went to live in Loretto in the early 80s who had a premonition, he said, from heaven, that the now current president was going to leave the country back to God. That might sound incredibly difficult for some people to even accept. People in our circles tend to either absolutely love the guy or hate the guy. Anyway, in the 80s, he met with somebody who brought the story to the U.S. eventually, but he had a brick placed in the Loretto door with the president's name on it. It was back in like 1988. And if a brick with a person's name on it is in there, they will get prayers they will get the masses said for them every day at the Vatican until the next time the door is open and the bricks are removed and new bricks are put in. So, and I had a thought about this, a real thought about this. A lot of people haven't seemed to have noticed. Yes, Kimberly, I'm aware of generally all the stuff that General Flynn was going through. I follow that story pretty closely. I follow the secular corruption very closely. I just don't talk about it here because I'd like my channel to not get wiped out, Everyday Catholics who care are struggling, no guidance by many priests, and others. Sad and scary for them. Did the Catholic world about the medical Moloch procedure figures from Ireland? Yeah, that's also scary. Let's see. Yes, I know the Q posted Vigano's letters. Yeah. If whoever Q is at this point. Like, there are people who think it's just 4chan trolls at this point. View of, the Loretto thing? Okay, so I just have a thing about the Loretto thing that most people haven't picked up on. And they say that the current president will lead America back to God. And the LifeSite video, he's talking about all the things, the March for Life, all this other stuff that the president did, and that's great. That's great. But you remember what it takes historically for countries to have a radical reversion to faith, right? You know what it takes? Usually, it takes horrible things happening, absolutely horrible things happening. And I'm not saying that the current president is the cause of those horrible things. But for him to, quote unquote, lead people back to God means that for the people of this country to shake off the addiction to the material that we have. Francis is 100% right to talk about consumerism separating people from faith. I mean, the church has been saying that for hundreds of years. But this country has, and I think it's been since the 90s that we really started drifting away, And then we got hammered, a 1-2 sort of punch in, that thing that happened in September of 2001, followed by an incredibly bad response from professing Christians in running the country. Then the third punch was the guy who followed him. It's going to take a lot for this country to come back to God. And when that happens, the road we're on right now is what it's going to take. And my suspicion is that this is going to get so bad that a lot of people that it will be of it. So again, don't take the Hermit of Loretto's message to be sunshine and roses. A lot of people think that it's sort of a sunshine and roses thing. Not necessarily. What do we do if the election comes and it's a contested result because of cheating? Both sides declare victory, and then all the the unrest that's already going on amps up to 10. What happens then? I suspect dark days are ahead. Thank you, Tom Williams. I appreciate it. Speaking of Father Isaac Murray, where has he been and what happened between him and the Fatima Center? I know that there's a GoFundMe for him now, John. That's all I know. All I know also about what happened between him and Fatima Center is that Father Isaac asked everyone not to speculate on it, that just to leave it private, that there was a difference of opinion on way to do things, and it had resulted in a falling out. And beyond that, people shouldn't speculate about it and talk about it. So I've never done a video, and I'm never going to. Jaron, does that mean that the president would be reelected this year? I mean, it could be. I don't know. Or I suspect he's going to. I'm literally laughing every time I read the methods behind these polls that are coming out. They're almost so ridiculous. Miss SOJ, yeah, I do think that people should be praying for the conversion of the president, especially since his wife is Catholic. And for instance, in defense, I'm not discounting the Loretto message at all. Just to be clear, when he came in, his wife wouldn't live in the White House until they had an exorcism done, and there's a statue of Our Lady of Fatima there. So, I mean, I don't discount it. I want people to also think about demonic oppression and demonic possession and what it looks like when these things are threatened. Go listen to the stories of exorcists, and then go look at what's going on in the culture right now. And you've got to ask yourself, had our country become demonically oppressed at some point? Thomas Keller, I do like Sam Hyde. He's a little edgy for a lot of people, but I do like him. Paul's right. The next 4 years, from all you've seen and heard from the various prophecies about the president, will be more significant ones. But who knows but God. Right, but I also don't take anything that's any of these things that are not coming from Catholic sources any seriously at all. I didn't even look at the Hermit of Loretto stuff because I thought I got it confused in my head with some stuff some Protestant pastor said. Did the prophecy say that he would lead the U.S. back to God during his presidency, or that the return would be a later result? It didn't say. It didn't say. LifeSite's YouTube channel has that video. It's easy one to spot, but not only because of its title, but because it has 385,000 views. Support the Convention of States. I'm really nervous about the Convention of States because think about the influence big business has in our government now, and then the influence they'd be able to exert at a Convention of States. I'm actually of the mind that a Convention of States would probably result in the annihilation of the Republic. And some people are fine with that, except for I don't know if, having anywhere from 5 to 50 republics in North America, many of whom have nuclear weapons, is a good idea. Paul's Wrath. Horrible things are in those next years as some of the prophecies we will see. Probably. I mean, I think we're heading towards the fulfillment of the Fatima message by the end of the decade. That's my take. I'm not giving you a per concrete timeline, and I'm probably wrong. I am not a prophet. There are these wackos out there who tell you the end is nigh, March 21st, 1996 at 11 a.m., the second coming. No, I'm not one of those guys. Laura Carley, can you send me an FB friend request? Your page is Catholic and your images are Lady of Fatima with a backdrop of the precious blood. Laura Kelly, you can just find me. Go into the description of my video. Any of my videos, you'll see my name spelled in several places, and there you can copy and paste that into Facebook. You'll find me with a picture of Gaston as my living in Oklahoma. Roseanne Rossi, I had to approve your comment that says we know we suffer as Christians. What is that all about? Like, thanks for the info. Okay. Yeah, thank you, John. Back to the saddle. The Bureau of Land Management declares a pox on the country and on the little strip of land in the Middle East that causes so many problems, or is the heart of so many problems. Protesters disrupt church services in outside of... Yeah, I can't... Yeah, no wonder I had to approve your comment, Back in the Saddle. Like, our platform, our wonderful, caring hosts, they censor things. Bureau of Land Management don't know who they go after. They literally took down statues. Yeah, no, it's part of the reason I think there's a... I can't imagine that they're that illiterate, right? So some of it has to be like the demonic. And remember, the parent organizations that if you criticize, you sound like a horrible human being and are treated as a pariah, their websites openly say that they're Marxists. So... Hermit of Loretto says that the con saying the mass is good. You do not agree. Who do you mean by the con? Oh, you mean con celebration? No. The president's right hand is Vigano. Many Catholics are working with the president. You think the Q isn't anti-Catholic but anti-swamp. Well, yeah, I mean, like virtually every one of the YouTube channels talking about the messages and things, they were all anti-Catholic, so I stopped paying attention to it. The rest of it, like, going straight to the source material, to me is like reading Nostradamus. So, the country has spent the last several decades opening just about every door to demonic influence that exists. The chickens are simply coming home to roost. Expect things to get much worse. Right, like, I already know some of the things that would have to be done to clean the country, to really get the country back to God, would be to find a way to either eliminate or at least suppress internet pornography. Do you think that's going to happen? It can happen. It wouldn't actually be probably all that hard to do. Sorry if you can hear no airplane going overhead. This is why I usually do my streams on Sundays. I live near a municipal airport, so. Thomas Keller, your neighbor, is one of the leaders of the Convention of States. I had to approve that comment, too. Bishop Cordula an exorcism of the... Yeah, I saw that. That's really cool, Judith. That is really cool. And I was pleased to see Bishop Barron out there praying the rosary. I'm not someone who has a great extreme hostility to him. I just don't trust him. Which is so sad because he's like oozes charisma. He has a way with talking to people, right? And I just wish he was, at least a little more conservative, if not a traditionalist. I prefer him being a traditionalist, Alan says, you notice in the 90s there was a dramatic increase in people who lie. You know what else happened in the 90s? We got cable news in a really big way in the 90s. CNN already existed. They got started in the 80s, I think. But in the 90s, you got Fox and MSNBC all appeared. And it's been that since that time also that nobody running for president has managed to really consist. You rarely get like 53% of the vote now running for president. Huh. That doesn't surprise me that the 2016 Moloch nominee had a so-called priestess at the White House. Yeah, Joe Halfley, that it's apparently true. I've heard that from numerous sources I trust that Mrs. Trump wouldn't live there. It reminded me of the sort of the opening part, some of the early parts of Charles Colombo's Star Spangled Crown book, where the new monarch of the United States, who got into that position in a very strange series of events that doesn't seem all that implausible anymore, wouldn't live in the White House until they had a traditional exorcism done on the White House, and then he had it done on the Congress building and on the Supreme Court too. Is Lefebvre a sedevacantist? Not that I've heard. Not as far as I know of. I know that there are. I know that the sedevacantists try to claim him, but Has anyone else felt closer to God, especially since the pandemic made the... Yeah. I would say so. I mean, the first time I received communion afterwards felt amazing. I mean, to be honest with you. Jackie Forestieri says that Lefebvre was never a Sedevacantist. I'll take your word for it. I'm thinking about recording another book of his for the channel. It takes a few weeks to do those because they're pretty long, and I know the SSPX doesn't care if anybody records them and uploads them, and I know this for a fact because I know of a semi-public figure who is close to the North American district for the SSPX, and they told me flat out they don't care if anybody records their books and puts them online. They make them free on their website. So I'm thinking about doing another one. I did the open letter to confused Catholics, and I'm trying to figure out which one to do next. So, Kathy Walsh, how's my knee? Getting better a little bit. I can walk around the house without a brace or crutch for short periods of time if I want to. I still not prepared to be able to cut my grass though, and that's kind of a pain because now my grass is starting to grow. Keys and Sofa, you're sort of right about social justice. Remember, though, the Catholic Church coined the term social justice. It comes from Catholic social teaching. It's what I wrote my doctoral dissertation on. So when anybody tells you social justice, there's no such thing, they're wrong. The term was coined by the Church in its formal social teaching. It's just got co-opted and stolen like so many other things. Sedevacantists reject the SSPX because they accept Pope Francis. Archbishop Lefebvre tried to get approval before ordinating bishops. Yeah, this is why I don't have a problem with he worked with them, and then he watched a pope get up there and permit crazy things to happen that make what we saw at the Pachamama stuff. We never saw anything worse than what we saw in Assisi until Pachamama. Thomas Keller, right, I don't really trust the Nostradamus stuff for those reasons. I've got a friend of mine who does, and that's his business, but I don't. Bombay Contact. I have a video Thursday, probably, about sort of what you're seeing in San Francisco, except I don't mention that with that suit you're saying, but it's... These court cases are astonishing to me. Pete Gerhardt, how is Q anti-Catholic? They repeat all the very worst, at least the supporters, all the public voices I've ever encountered content from online, all repeat the very worst anti-Catholic propaganda that we were used to seeing from like Jack T. Chick, and that's why I tuned him out. Roseanne Rossi had to approve your comment because it was filtered by the system. The president is too smart to hate Catholicism; he just hates fake Catholics. I kind of wonder if it's his name or if it's the word hate. Verum has a video recommendation for people. If you want to email it to me, Verum, let me know if you do. I can put it in the chat. What happened first in America? Porn legalized or Moloch worship? The Molochian procedures were legalized in 1973 by a legislative act by the Supreme Court. The pornography was decriminalized essentially in function in the 70s or the 80s. But it was already being much more tolerated too. Playboy was being permitted by then. But, we're talking about the stuff that's not, shall we say, simulated. Without the Eucharist, faults are often more pronounced. This can help us retain a contrite heart. Right. And also, it's a good idea, Kimberly. I think people should periodically, really carefully discern if they're actually in a state of grace to receive the Eucharist. It's almost become like we just receive daily because for funsies. It's so weird. Tom Williams, the president's son-in-law and daughter are followers of the group where the person of the Antichrist or prophecy says he is to come. I have a video tomorrow on on exactly that, except not related to the president. But that is also a complicating factor. But it's very un-PC to point out that extra ecclesiam nullis salus is real and that there are implications from it. Paul's Wrath. I mean, that could be the case, although I don't know. I tend to think that about Parler, though. We've got Norm MacDonald doing Weekend Update during the 90s, so at least some news is worth watching. Right. I think he was probably the last of the last non-leftists on SNL, though. Norm MacDonald was a national treasure at the time. Guadalupe image shows the president as Cyrus as the 46th star is Sirius is surrounded by a golden triangle in 2020. I don't know what you're talking about, Prey 153. I really don't know what you're talking about. Have I ever heard of the Most Holy Family? Yes, and don't advertise them on in my chat again, please. I do not. I don't tell people what content to watch and not to watch, except for them. Stay away from them. Those guys are grifters of the griftingest variety. Yes, they sometimes make informative videos, but those guys are. I don't have problems with Sedevacantist, but I have problems with these Sedevacantists. Do you understand what I'm saying? ML says that she admires the president's wife. She stands her ground. She does think she will encourage her husband to convert. I hope so. Tweeting Vigano's letter was a strong sign. He is surrounded by Protestants who hate the faith. Yeah, that's a problem. Freya, you are absolutely correct. It is time to start living the faith now. Living the Fatima message now. Guadalupe Image's victory banner of God's kingdom in 2020 an image. Sirius only star and mantle of stars ruled in the heavens. Guadalupe Image gives except the current president is the 45th, not the 46th president. So I don't know. Again, careful with the numerology stuff too. Pretty sure that's actually condemned by the church, since it's numerology stuff. Especially like anything that smells of astrology also. You don't understand how to keep the 5 first Saturdays? How is it you've never heard of it until recently? Because because the Fatima message has been suppressed, Miss Wheeler. I have several videos on the 5 first Saturdays devotion. Go through my channels. There are 2 search bars. If you go to my channel and you see, the view where you can see all my videos, and you can have to keep scrolling and scrolling. There are 2 search bars. There's the big one at the top and then a smaller one. Use the smaller one and just do a search for Saturdays. That should be enough. And just go watch all of them, and I explain how to do it. And back when everyone had access to the Mass, I was doing one every quarter because I'm a firm believer in the 5 first Saturdays. Problem is, most people stopped having access to the Mass. I'm hoping in the fall that things will be sane enough again that I can do it. Yes, Prey 153, you're repeating yourself in the chat a lot. You're gonna get you continuing to repeat that is going to get you flagged as spam by the algorithm. Tonight, Victoria, Australia is locking down again due to the thing. No mass or confession since April, but organized protests. Yeah. This is the crux of a video I have for you later in the week. The TLM made you realize how unworthy you are to receive our Lord. You know what it did for me? I used to get very judgmental when I was going to Novus Ordo masses, when I was seeing people doing all the Protestant hand gestures, the look at me holding my invisible Bible stuff, look at me imitating the priest with my raising my hands, and all the stuff that is against the general instruction of the Roman Missal. The laity should never be doing any of that stuff. He's not even supposed to be holding hands during the Our Father. I got very judgmental. And then I got to go into the traditional Latin Mass and started feeling like a worm in the faith compared to the people around me. I was like, wow, these people are way holier than I am. Teresa Nelson, Matt Fred is getting to get people to go to the parlor. Well, I've noticed that the establishment conservatives are trying to get people to go to parlor, and that was a gigantic red flag for me. And they've apparently already started banning people over there. And apparently the head of Twitter got them to adopt a lot of the same policies Twitter has. So congratulations. Enjoy your free speech while it lasts over there. Enjoy your rosary, Jaron. Yes, Vanilla Latte, I was referring to that. That's when I was talking about the Hermit of Loretto, that's what I was talking about, was that video. Missed the first 40 minutes. You can't find the new letter from Vigano and her Hermit of Loretto. This video, you can just click on that red bar, Bombay, and scroll back to the beginning. I did the Vigano letter at the beginning, and you can this will go live. I'm not gonna hide the video. I did it at the beginning. And the Hermit of Loretto, my observation is this: that the road from here to there, of what the Hermit of Loretto's alleged prophecy is, of a country returning to God, that has to be rocky. For a country as far gone as the United States to return to God is going to require a very, very rocky road, probably far worse than we've already gone through. Now, here's the upside to that, though. The United States periodically goes through religious revivals, and we haven't had one, and we're past due for one. So we should have one coming. So who knows? I mean, I would rather it be America return to its, my druthers are. My first preference is for the church, for the faith to be embraced properly, right? But, if it just embraced its Protestant roots, that's still objectively better than this cultural Marxist stuff we have going on. Thanks, LR. LR gives you his or their take on what people should be doing. Thomas Keller does not like Matt Fradd and calls Parler a Five Eyes honeypot. D. Marie says, you think we Catholics need to find a way to come together. Not only are we weak when we quarrel, but it distracts us from the schemes of the devil. The anti-NO almost turned me away from the trade. I don't tell people what mass to go to or not to go to. That's a personal thing of mine. If people tell me where they tell me about all these problems they have with their mass, I say, well, when that I tell them that I took my family out of the Novus Ordo, but Tom Williams, Bishop Williamson is the most well-informed prelate who has spent jail time for not believing the narrative about promoting that thing. Taking him. I like Bishop Williamson. I do. I absolutely like Bishop Williamson. If you want to see the best video ever made on the 7 ages of the church or the 6 ages of the church, go watch Bishop Williamson's talk on it. But be prepared for him to say things that you have been conditioned in the culture to find reprehensible. Yeah, Bombay, I'm glad to have helped. I did the video. I did it at the beginning because I know that on playback people are going to watch that probably for that. Thomas Keller thinks civil conflict is imminent. Very sad, as Warren would say. Yeah, it could be, or who knows? Maybe if the incumbent wins in November, all of this will just go away, or it'll get a lot worse. Who knows? People should take prudent steps to be prepared for things, as Joseph did in the Old Testament with the storage of 7 years of grain. There's your biblical endorsement of being, taking prudent steps. Rookie, the anime ninja, asks, hope my news doing well. It's improving slowly. If I lost access to the TLM, which would I likely go to as a backup? The first thing I would do is I would look to see if there's a monastery with public masses near me. I'm not a believer in abandoning your right. Going to Mass or the Divine Liturgy with other rites is totally, totally a good thing. You should understand that, the Byzantines are as Catholic as the Latins are, but you should stick to your own rite as much as possible. So I wouldn't abandon it. But, if there was a Dominican priory near me, well, in Portland, one of the few places you can get in Portland, the traditional Mass, is from the Dominicans, and they're probably the most reverent Novus Ordo I've ever seen. So that's where I would look first, because they tend to be. Dominicans, of course, like anybody else. Oh, here we go. Dominicans, I saw that I was lagging. Oh, here we go. Lagging again. But yeah, I would look for the Dominicans first. They did that. LifeSite did. The Hermit of Loretto passed in 2009. Teresa Patel, my wife and I don't have a traditional Latin Mass near us. We drive literally 90 minutes each direction for one, most of the time. Thomas Keller says the 7 years of grain attitude now is the way forward. That is absolutely okay. Byzantine is okay. It's a rite of the Catholic Church. Absolutely, it's okay. It's different. The Byzantine Eastern rites are definitely completely fine. It's just different. You're going to be a little disoriented at their liturgy. For many, the knows all we have. Yep, this is one of the reasons why I don't. This is why I also use the term traditionally minded. My friend Tried Patrick, over of the soon-to-be renamed Tried Cath show, TCS, is getting very angry with the term traditionalist because of how it's being used by people, to the point where he's going to rename his show. And I share his anger about this. It's why I refer to people who are traditionally minded. Some of the holiest Catholics I've ever met are in the Novus Ordo. And when I came into the church, it was in the Novus Ordo, and I received communion and had blatantly religious experiences receiving our Lord at the Novus Ordo. So this is one of the points of contention I have with Sedevacantists. It's just, I know for a fact that you can get the Eucharist there. I can tell you for a fact. And one of the priests I go to confession with is a good confessor, a good priest. In fact, it's weird is there's a pretty liberal Benedictine monastery not far from me, but the priests there, the older priests are very good confessors. It's weird. It's the homilies make me grumble the times I've gone, but like going to them for confession, I have never been told, well, that's not a sin, or go receive unworthily. And I've never been told that junk from them. They're very good confessors. So it's not so cut and dry with people. Vanilla latte, my knee. It's getting better by fits and starts. Yeah, Verum, I'm not wild about the charismatic thing either, but, Bombay contact. What you might consider doing is getting involved with your parish. See if you can find your way into the parish council. That's how you get influence in these things. Pete Schneider, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's ultimately how a future council or future pope rectified things, is with that observation that you have there. Byzantine Catholic bishops from the Byzantine Catholic Patriarch Church elected Vigano Pope. That's not true. It was apparently like a Byzantine Sedevacantist who did that. They don't have the authority. The Byzantine Catholic bishops would not pray 153. They would not have held a conclave because that would be a schismatic act, and they would have all gone into schism at that point. That would be a nakedly schismatic act because they'd be trying to elect their own hierarchy. And hierarchy, I don't mean like a handful of bishops with no jurisdiction as the SSPX, because that's not a hierarchy. I'm talking a hierarchy with universal jurisdiction by trying to elect their own pope. So no, they did not elect a Vigano pope. That was some Sedevacantist group. YouTube carries St. John Cantius masses from Chicago. The canons regular preservationists of the extraordinary form. Also, they do add or face the altar mass every day. Yeah, and so do the Dominicans. The Dominicans typically are doing their masses ad orientem as well. Thomas Keller says stocking up on food, certain kinds of implements, financially, even if our guy wins in November, and he probably will, things are still going to get worse, not better. This is true. You should be prepared for how things can go. Flattery, I don't know what you mean by door of mercy, door of justice timelines to this countdown to the second coming. If anybody's doing a countdown to the second coming, I would immediately tune them out. Our Lord says we do not know the time. We do not know when he's coming back. That's good enough for me. Anybody out there telling you this is when the second coming is, they don't know. And we were told explicitly by the church not to do that stuff. Teresa Patel, your parish can't ban communion on the tongue. It's against the law of the church. A law of the church, by the way, instituted by the bishops that these guys and popes that these guys love. So they don't have that right to do that. Hello to you, Dean. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on. I've been on for an hour now, though. That's pretty good. Do I have a favorite fake apparition? A favorite fake one? I don't touch the fake ones. So I'm amused by how much people believe Medjugorje. Amused in a very sad kind of way. Enjoy, Freya. I'm glad you're going to be able to go to daily mass. Yeah, Thomas Keller, I guess you could say Medjugorje is my favorite fake apparition since it's the one I've talked about the most. I made somebody really mad in the comments on a live stream once about when I said nasty things about Bayside, though. And then like a few weeks later, someone sent me a prayer card with some rose petal from Bayside. I was like, really? Like, Bayside is overtly condemned. Townsend says you were at a Dominican mass on Sunday there in Ireland and it was a mix of traditional and novice. They did, though, allow communion on the tongue, and around 90% were received that way. There you go. That's a good sign. And from what I understand the condition of the liturgy in Ireland, that's, if you can go there. Forced inoculations with no exemption for religious objections passed in Maine. Been allowed to go to vote. It's clearly unconstitutional. It is clearly unconstitutional, and hopefully the Thomas More Society or somebody like that will take that to court. Although at this point, I'm joining the people who are very frustrated with the with all these additions to the Supreme Court that we thought were on our side, but apparently not. Have I ever heard of a novice sort of Catholic say you prefer going to one and no mass or another because it's more traditional? Yes, I have heard of that. I have heard of people say that because it's the more reverent argument. A simple crusader, they ban communion on the tongue in your diocese. Yeah, that's usually a bad sign. Pete Schneider, you got exactly what was the first red flag for me about Medjugorje. And the second red flag for me was Our Lady looking like she was going to drop the infant Jesus. I mean, come on. The main priest from Countdown to the Kingdom, who purports to see visions of a Christ, etc., also defends Vatican II, says the issue is just interpretation. Another red flag. Yeah. We went to Caritas in 2012 and it changed your lives, and you figured out the guy running is basically a cult leader. Wow. I mean, devotion, like Betty Miss Conklin, will tell you this much. I think that, I don't deny that people have real experiences at Medjugorje. I just think our Lord's mercy is such that he will try to prevent souls from being lost, from people who are legitimately fooled into going to and taking part in those things. Doesn't mean that the people running it aren't con artists, though. Others currently a survey regarding restrictions on communion on the tongue. Yeah, I think I took it on Twitter, but I don't know. Fake or not, they should have waited for approval. That is correct, Viverum. And with Medjugorje, they couldn't wait for approval because the bishop of Medjugorje, I think 2 or 3 consecutive bishops of Medjugorje all condemned it. And that should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. It's disobedience. Also, Our Lady, if you know enough about apparitions of Our Lady to various mystics and saints of the church, you will know that doesn't fly. That has never flown. That she would not approve of disobedience to the bishops. Huh. Stop. SV, Ireland's liturgy wasn't that bad 10 years ago. Half the parishes used the rail, albeit often with what I call totally extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, because they're so extraordinary, you see them everywhere. He probably wasn't the reason the TLM didn't take off. The NO wasn't bad enough. What I also understand is Ireland has pretty strong SSPX presence there that do that are and they're located in such a way that most of the people who want to go to the TLM can drive an hour or less and get to one. Forever Young, at least Kavanaugh and Gorsuch seem okay with limiting. Yeah, that's true. That is true, but we'll see, because the court overturned that stupid... Not that the law was dumb, but what they did. Thomas Keller likes SV's handle. Member channel says, Bill and Melinda Gill, our billionaire taxi throw philanthropist and his wife said in a video recently that the next affliction would make people wake up. China have just confirmed cases. Yep. LR offers on the table to cut your TLM drive in half. Well... Maybe, LR. It's not exactly the easiest thing to do, though, you know what I mean? The timeline doesn't even make sense, and I'm wary of anyone trying to monetize the apocalypse second coming. Right, like, I put up my We Were Warned videos, KV, so that people won't get caught up in this stuff. Like, yeah, so you know what the signs of the times are? Well, you know what the signs are, right? Because you should know what these are. And Catholic prophecy is very interesting stuff, and you can learn a lot about the faith from it, and a lot about our current problems. But also, if you know them, it helps shield you, at least the proof ones, it helps shield you from getting caught up in this stuff. Argentina's having major issues with communion on the tongue being denied. Yeah, Argentina's a mess. The SSPX in Ireland are awesome. There we go. SV endorses them there. Good. I'm going to disagree with you, Barb, that Bayside was never properly investigated. The bishop has the authority to suppress them, regardless of how bad the bishops are. Do I read the eponymous flower? Sometimes I do. When they have an interesting article that comes to me through probably usually Canon 212. I like Canon 212, even though I'm pretty sure Frank Walker doesn't care for me, but that's fine. Judging from my interactions with him on Twitter, I like Canon 212. I think he does really good work. Remember, bishop can be on the wrong side and will not approve the apparition. I know some that are not. Well, I mean, it's still their authority to suppress that stuff. It all goes back to jurisdictional authority, right? There are very few good Catholic prophecy books. That's true. Somebody recommended one to me in a chat a couple weeks ago, and I have it now sitting on my kitchen table. I need to. Since I'm nearly done with this round of revision of my dissertation, to the point where I submitted the document, just I'm working on an attachment, I might actually have time, especially since I can't sit at my desk now for more than a couple of hours without it being a bad thing for my knee. I may actually have time to sit and, lay in bed and read a book until my knee gets better. Ryan Garcia, hello back to you. Emperor, as the king dude calls him, Fauci said he's concerned about people who don't like that you're using a lot of flag terms, who don't accept his authority as if healthcare decisions are not our own. Well, remember, I refer to these people as technocrats. These are people who believe that the administrative state of government is the supreme authority. And I know this because I was trained to be one of them, and in my classes in graduate school that were about administration and how to be an administrator, they talked openly about how you can use the administrative apparatus of government to stop a president or a governor you don't like. They said this nakedly in these classes. The DS term the president uses, it's a flag term. I know for a fact that it is, so I'm not going to use it. They say that, the stuff he says about them is the stuff that they were saying from in my coursework. It's just from the opposite end. Freya says, stick with Fatima. You can't go wrong with Fatima. Which is true. I stick with Fatima and stick with the Akita. And my favorite underspoken about one is Our Lady of Revelation, which I will eventually cover. And it was approved by John Paul II, and in his capacity as the Bishop of Rome, because it happened in his diocese. Let's see, Teresa Baker Carl. You go to an NO with a wonderful priest who's gradually teaching, and he talks about hell and the various worst ways to get there. Hey, you got a good priest. Good. When people talk about restoring the faith, like a lot of people think that the traditionalists all only want the Latin Mass. No. What we want is a teaching of the faith. Full stop. We want the Catholic faith taught authentically. That's the primary thing. Yes, the liturgy is an essential component of that, or how we worship and is how we pray, or how we live is how we pray. Lex credendi, lex orandi. Again, my bad Latin, but if you get a priest who's teaching the faith and saying the Mass with reverence and trying to clamp down some of the worst abuses you see at the NO, then that's not a bad thing. Have I looked into the illumination of conscience? Any solid sources on this? No, appreciate the vote of confidence you have in me, Teresa Patel. I will say that I have done one of my Marie Julie Jeheni videos makes a reference to what is clearly the illumination of conscience, the Great Warning. I'm trying to find one from approved apparitions, because there's a big name unapproved apparition that people keep asking over, and it's unapproved, so I can't do it. It's a fast rule of mine. But there are references in other Catholic prophecies. So I may do a We Were Warned video if I can find enough from Catholic mystics and things about it. Knowing prophecy and stuff is one thing. Your channel's great, and we need to know this stuff. Yeah, Father Michel Rodriguez gives me pause too. I've been warned. I've seen the heresies that he is said to be promoting, and that's why I don't talk. The only time I ever mention him is when someone brings him up in a chat. To think the NO wasn't planned is easy to refute if you read the Alta Vendita. It's the most evil thing you've ever read. Pete, I actually have the full text of the Alta Vendita on my channel. It's there. I put it up for a reason. Do I use a St. Philomena cord? No, I should, but I don't. EMJ has been good on fake apparitions. Yeah, until they booted him off this platform. Have the SSPX been accepted back into the church? That would require that they had ever been outside the church, Townsend, and they have never been outside the church. They have never been in schism. So, and besides, Francis gave them enough of the jurisdiction to do the things that they do. That is, Bishop Schneider says you can't give people partial jurisdiction. You can't give them partial faculties. They either have all the faculties or none. And since Pope Francis gave them some, he says it stands to reason that they have all of them. I have no issue with the SSPX on that stuff. So, does Archbishop Vigano in good terms with does he like Lefebvre? I don't know. He has never mentioned the SSPX or Lefebvre except in defense of himself. Ernie Sandoval thinks something is going to happen before the thing in November. I think you're right. What do you think of Father Gregory Hess and his talk? I like Father Gregory Hess. Canon Hess, to be more precise. I plan to do a bio on him at some point. Aaron G, no, the SSPX are not on the outs. Mad D, do I know if Pope Benedict will be attending his brother's funeral? I'm pretty sure his brother's funeral's happened already. I don't think he will be. Related Revelation approved by Pius XII. Okay. I know that also John Paul II was apparently pretty big on it, but he didn't talk about it much. The only place I'll disagree with you there, John Ruplinger, is Father Michel Rodriguez, because he's a big fan of Medjugorje, and, at least he seems to be. Blessing from the Pacific Northwest. Well, yes, my homeland. Pink Nickel Vids. He's driving back and forth each week between your Washington State home and the daughter's place in PDX by PSU per household. Well, thank you for the prayers and enjoy your drive. I know it's about a 4-hour drive to Seattle, so I'm hoping you're somewhere closer than that. You remember the day when the right up here elefication was just a joke, right? Yeah, Susan from Parish Council was prophetic. Do I ever watch any other Catholic channels? I do sometimes. I started limiting it so I wouldn't sound like everybody else. Sometimes I watch LifeSite. Depending if Dr. Marshall's got an interview I find interesting, I'll watch that. Census Fidelium, Tumblr House, and if you can handle edgy, really challenging stuff, Trad Cath Show are probably the ones I watch the most. The Catholic, now the Catholic Economics podcast as well. But I don't watch a lot of the more scandalous stuff anymore. And I lost my spot. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Praise also is kneelers for those who want to kneel for communion in the tongue. How many Anos do that? Not a lot, but hopefully he can get the altar rail in. The altar rails are beautiful anyway. Do I believe St. Vincent Ferrer was the angel of the apocalypse? Because that's one of his titles. Was that title given to him by like a pope or a council or something? Because if that's the case, then sure. If that's just something people called him, I don't know. Can some nutritionally dense foods like oranges, limes, lemons, clementines, look up Mary's Nest. Also, honey-infused garlic. Huh, nice. Do I know what happened to him? Somebody asked me this about an hour ago, and I'll say this much. Father Isaac Marie Relia and Fatima Center had some sort of disagreement that led to them falling out. That is all either side has said. And Father Isaac Marie, the priest, has said asked people not to speculate on it or do a lot of talking about it. He's just moving on. I know he has a GoFundMe somewhere. I saw it on Facebook once. Ooh, that's not a good endorsement there, Roseanne. Someone who follows Bishop Barron recommended Father Michel to him. Watching the recent arrest, could she be pressed to imply all sort of things if the DA is corrupt? Could be. We'll see. I think that I thought that person was a federal prisoner, though. I'll hop off the chat. Well, thanks for joining us, Teresa Patel. Do I believe that King Charles I was a martyr? I don't know enough about him. I would take that question to Charles Coulombe on the Tumblr House podcast. Bishop Schneider supports the SSPX. He isn't retired. Yes, that's why I defer to him, and he's far from retirement. The guy's like 50 or something. If by some weird act he became pope, that would be the he'd be one of those popes who could probably reign for 30 years. But he was asked by Francis and the Vatican to observe the SSPX closely to determine their canonical status, and they're not in schism according to him. That's good enough for me. Rebecca Zenz, remember when 15 years ago the Mexican exorcist did an exorcism over the country to drive the demons out? You think those demons headed north just a bit? Could be. Could be. Judith Mazur, they would never do that. And if we gave up our tax exemption status, if the churches got taxed, the Catholic Church in America would go bankrupt pretty quick. It wouldn't take much. And they'd probably also lose most of their federal funding, which I don't think would be a bad thing. But again, the consequences could be really catastrophic. Well, thank you for your support on Patreon, Betty Conklin. I do appreciate it. Tried Patrick dishing out those spicy meatballs at the moment. That's right, out of African polar bears. He doesn't really hold back. Thomas Keller says the Tridcast show is extreme, but still worth listening to. He curses on his show, and he says things about other Catholic commentators that are definitely hard for some people to hear. Let's see. You agree with my culture comment. You attend a small SSPX church. Everyone makes an effort to be there, and it's very good to be with people who believe in traditional Catholic lifestyle. I noticed that at the FSSP parish I go to too, but I've heard that about the SSPX. If you have a few hours free, would you watch us on the Garden Shed sometime? If you want to email me a link, Paul. Paul, I don't know if priest is your name or if you are a priest, but send me an email with a link to that to your internet show, I'll give it a view, as long as it's not like live in the middle of the night or something. Do I think the illumination of conscience will happen? Yes, I do. And I hope I'm in a state of grace when it happens. Bishop Schneider is older than Archbishop Sample, but looks young. Oh, I see. I've never looked at Bishop Schneider's biography. Which, by the way, if you ever want to know a bishop who has clearly torpedoed his career and ascent to higher office, it's Bishop Schneider. He's an auxiliary bishop in Kazakhstan, right? He's of German extraction, but he's in Kazakhstan due to family history, I think. But he's an auxiliary bishop. There's almost no chance he's ever going to become like an archbishop or a cardinal archbishop because of the things he's saying. It's one of the things I like about him, even if I don't agree with everything he says. It's why I think the idea that he's controlled opposition is ridiculous, because he's saying things that have annihilated his career. And controlled opposition are only interested in themselves. Ryan Garcia has a prayer request. Please pray for your father's soul. He passed recently. He died last Father's Day. And also please pray for Ryan and Ryan's family, especially his mother. So there's the prayer request, please. Michael V. likes tried Patrick. Regular listener tried Patrick. Off topic. Bombay contact. You're in a healthy debate with a Jehovah's Witness pastor. He says punishment within hell does not exist. Even Jesus' own quotes are enough. Am I wrong? What? For you maybe debating with a Jehovah's Witness, maybe. I mean, these guys are... I can't remember which early heresy they are, but the Jehovah's Witnesses are just repackaged early heresy. I don't remember which one it is. But the punishment in hell exists. Hell is real. Doesn't matter what some weird apostate thinks. I was not aware that Gordon's BLM tweets came after his termination. I wasn't aware of that. Do I think there will be a Catholic revival? Yes. Garden Shed is a YouTube channel. Okay, I will look into Garden Shed. And let's see. I agree to BFB 16 has spiritual testimony ready and all the setup to weed out all heresy in church and return us to the truth. I almost expect him to drop some sort of major document when he passes. And that document is already in the hands of somebody he trusts to have it published. That would not surprise me in the slightest. Jackie Forrester says that Bishop Schneider is ethnically German, but grew up in Eastern Europe under communism, but with very devout parents. Yes, I've heard that. I just couldn't remember the specifics. There, I'm sorry, How to Be Christian. I do like the channel How to Be Christian. I do enjoy the channel How to Be Christian. Thank you, Jeep Guy, for the prayers. Yeah, Varum, that guy's doing good work, and he's kind of got the lighthearted kind of, approach to things. And he got in trouble some months ago, or a couple years ago now, I guess, with because he took on James White and apparently didn't do a very good job or something. I don't know, but he went radio silent for a while, but he's back. Could I do a series on all the different heresies? I could, but what I'd want to do first is read Hilaire Belloc's book, The Great Heresies. That's what I would want to start with. And I'd probably also go back and reread Chesterton's book, Heretics. And then I'd probably just go and look up all the great heresies in history. The one on Protestantism would probably get me in trouble, because our YouTube does not like when you criticize other religions. This chat remain here for a while. I have to go to your job for a little bit. Teresa, I do plan to let this video ride. So when I log off here in a few minutes, it'll be up. What about daily mass or just the Latin mass? I mean, if you can go to a daily mass, go to a daily mass. I took my family out of the Novus Ordo, and I had reasons to do it, but I can't tell you what mass to go to. I'm not somebody with any authority to do that. Yes, flattery. I did read. I started with Vigano's letter at the beginning, and then we talked briefly about an observation I had about the Hermit of Loretto. And I'll say this again: the Hermit of Loretto. If you're not familiar with the Hermit of Loretto, go watch the LifeSite video on it. I'm not going to do a video on it because their video is way better than anything I could produce on it. Their video is really good. It's about half an hour long. My only thought is that the Hermit of Loretto said back in the early 80s that the now current president, he named him by name, at the time, back when he was not a figure any of us would want to have anything to do with. He said he would lead America back to God. Well, the problem with that is what people aren't really getting is that for a country to have a conversion like that, or reversion, if you will, usually requires such a rocky road that most people in our circles are not ready for it. So just think about that for a second when you go and watch that. Teresa Baker Carl, you're pretty much right about Jehovah's Witnesses. Plus, they say that our Lord was like swapped out with St. Michael the Archangel or something, and that's gross. Ryan Garcia says, if you know of any priest, please ask him if possible to say at least a low requiem mass for your father's soul. Yes, that's, having masses said, and here's a good rule. If you know of a Catholic who passed, have a mass said for them. It could be one of the greatest acts of charity you ever do. If you know a Catholic in the public eye who passed, who had a reversion to the faith, and passed, and were not really surrounded by Catholics, but they died in the good graces of the church and had a priest at their bedside and the whole 9 yards, have masses said for them. They probably need it, and there's probably no one in their life doing it for them. Well, Judith Mazur, I don't think Francis is watching my live stream, but if he is, he'll see your request to assign Bishop Schneider to the Cleveland Diocese. Oh, you don't have a bishop there. That's awful. How to Be Christian has very good rebuttals of White. He said he went silent to make changes to the channel. Okay, that's fine. I didn't really know what the thing was. I just was happy to see he was back when he was. Yeah, Nora, I think Anne Catherine Emicker is a good source. I was, if anybody knows where I can find the full prophecies of Blessed Anna Maria Taigi, send them to me, because the source I had disappeared from the internet. So if someone can send me a link to something that's working, that's not just her little snippet about the 3 days of darkness, send it to me, okay? If B16 dropped a deathbed tell-all or something similar, then maybe we would be able to forget what his disappointment was. Well, I have my theory as to why I have a theory that is if he did resign and it wasn't for good reasons, he was forced out, there's a way to prove it, but you would have to do Freedom of Information Act requests about things, and anybody who did that would probably have put a big target on themselves and their family. Anthony Melendez, yes, those were a group of schismatics. They were not actual, they basically, those were schismatics. Vigano was never elected Pope, and Pope Francis is not in jail. There are people who think he is. It's such weird stuff. What is the best book of manual theology for a simple layman? No idea. I would say, I'm a little skeptical of this sudden, everyone declaring themselves a Thomist thing. That's so weird to me. There are 35 or 36 doctors of the church, right? But I would just go read some of Frank Sheed's work from the 50s earlier. That's probably what you should see. ML loves Chesterton, as do I. I'll have Chesterton probably again in a couple weeks. I'm trying to find. I already have my patrons will in the next couple of days have access to my weekend videos, which will include a new thing from Belloc. I've recorded that and put that up this morning. It's not available yet to the public, but the patrons will have it soon. Other you can criticize Catholicism all day, every day, on all major social media channels. This is true, Mark. I've always had to be very surreptitious about how I refer to other religions. What's going on with the Hagia Sophia? The Turks trying to mess with it again? They're apparently talking, Christine, they're talking about converting it into a mosque. That's what they're talking about doing. I mean, I'm surprised they haven't done it already. Mary Faulkner, fast reader monotone. Well, I got excoriated by people when I tried to do anything. And the fast reading thing, I've tried. I can't slow down. I've tried. If it's that big of a problem, either unsubscribe, or I can ban you if you want. Seriously, it's one of those criticisms I'll get that will get me to nuke you off my channel faster than anything else. Or you can click the little wheel icon, that little gear icon, and drop it to 0.75 speed. But yeah, I tried to be a little more lively with my reading, and I got excoriated for it. Reading those things is not as easy as you might think. Have I seen that a group of Byzantine? They're not. I've already answered that, and those were not. Those guys were schismatics. An SSPX church does a monthly requiem mass. You actually ask them to put the name of Mozart and his father and Antonio Vivaldi in front of the list. Oh, nice. If I seem, Lynn, I don't watch Church Militant, so no, I haven't seen it. You missing pics and videos. Your son missed talking to you on Messenger. Oh yeah, no. People say give up Facebook. It's harder than you might think. Let's see. What are the thoughts on the Diamond Brothers instead of... Andy, I don't watch the Diamond Brothers. I don't tell people what channels to watch and not to watch, but other than that one, I tell people not to watch that channel. Those guys are the griftingest grifters ever. John Ruplinger, when I do my video on Our Lady of Revelation, it will simply be what the apparition said. I will eventually do sort of a comprehensive, probably pretty long video on messages from Our Lady, and then probably the comprehensive, pretty long video on messages from the of other seers, just as capstones to We Were Warned, before I start taking Catholic prophecy into a different way. Let's see. Sorry, Mary, it's just a very touchy thing for me. Like, seriously. The hardest videos I record every week, the hardest ones, the ones that take the longest and the most work to do, are the ones I do almost no writing for. And that's the most papal encyclicals on the weekends. Those things are so difficult to do. And I think they're the most important ones I do. Because those things were not meant to be read aloud. That's why they're so hard. And Bishop and Vigano's letters were clearly not meant to be read aloud either. Yeah, Christina, I have a We Were Warned video for you guys tomorrow. Unless you're a patron of the channel, then you've got access to it now. But it's coming up tomorrow unless there's some major news today, and I don't think there's going to be. Riza says some Diamond Brothers followers call Chesterton a heretic for some comments he wrote concerning Buddha and the way the world views beliefs. Yeah, the Diamond Brothers are like those guys who say that there were people out there who say the same thing about Belloc. And I'm like, okay, guys. Like, if you think Belloc and Chesterton were heretics, or if you think they were socialists, you need to really re-examine everything you think. All right, but yeah, my wife and I have an appointment in just over an hour, so I got to run. So, if you are tuned in late and you want to hear the Vigano letter, it's at the beginning. I did it at the very beginning. I did a couple minutes of chit chat with people waiting for the chat to fill up, but I did the Vigano thing at the beginning, and I'll end with my observation about the Loretto thing again, which is to say that the Hermit of Loretto's message is that the current president will lead America back to God, and a lot of people don't really understand the implications of that, including what it takes for an entire country to come back to God. If you want an idea of what it takes, go back and read your Old Testament. Go see what it took, the chosen people of God in the Old Testament to return to God all the times they strayed. Think about that for a minute and think about what we probably have going on. Brian Garcia, does the church condemn capitalism? The church does not condemn capitalism qua capitalism. That's almost a verbatim quote from Quadragesimo Anno. What it does condemn is every form of capitalism the United States has ever had since probably 1820. It just does. And this is why I don't take seriously anybody who says, crypto-Catholic. I'm okay. Sorry, I've read the encyclicals. I wrote my dissertation on this. That's not what the church teaches. There are various schools of economic thought, economic and political thought born from Catholic social teaching. Distributism is one of them, but it's not an ideology because it doesn't have a plan for implementation. I know what the plan for implementation should be for distributism, and that's spreading the gospel and converting culture. But for some reason, the contemporary distributists never talk about that. It was sort of like Chesterton, Belloc, Father McNabb, Pesch, and others were trying to really target the socialists who were, the young socialists out there who were causing so many problems in the culture, saying, hey, some of the things you're noticing are not wrong, but your solution is cultural annihilation. And so let's become Catholic, and here's what you need to do. But that's sort of lost on a lot of people. Do I know much about Our Lady of Kibeho? Carrie Lawrence, I did a video on Our Lady of Kibeho. You can find it on my channel. Do I know anything about the prophecies of St. Malachi? I don't trust the prophecies of St. Malachi because it didn't show up until he was dead for 2 centuries. But yeah, I got to run, so let's see. I think there's very special to me. Well, thank you, Pink Nickelvids. Feel bad for the Transalpine Redemptorists. They left the SSPX and went with So their mask could be invalid if their SSPX are gone. Well, I don't know. I don't have much of an opinion on the ordination issue because I think there's some other things going on. Rose's Rose. Imagine thinking Dorothy Day is Catholic. I'm not a fan of Dorothy Day. She was I appreciate that she entered the church, and I appreciate she took all her political fervor and turned it into like what she was doing. But her solutions, things she wrote, were extreme. All right. Anyway, I am ending now, Jaren. Sorry. So, anyway, you all have a nice day. I've got an appointment that